Greetings. I'm recording a short episode today. Well, we'll see if it turns out to be short. I don't know that for certain. Inspired by a new subscriber who reminded me that I haven't really spoken much to this symbol that you see on each of my thumbnail images and on the channel. So I want to tell the story of how this symbol found me and of a little bit of its history, but then more speak to what it's come to mean to me. So I don't know, many of you may have seen the original Doctor Strange movie where Benedict Cumberbatch plays Doctor Strange and Tilda Swinton plays the Ancient One, and I can't remember the other character's name. Maybe it's something like Mordo, where Mordo is explaining to Doctor Strange that some powers are too big to manage, so we endow objects with it. I think that's kind of how it was expressed. And I'm just going to be a little bit less dramatic and suggest the idea that language has been encoded with meaning, and then we sort of inherit it. So the symbols that we use, for instance, in our alphabet are inherited symbols that carry meaning. And then that's how we can collectively communicate and cast spells with each other. It's interesting to look into some of the origins and etymology of those words with regards to language. So when we create a symbol or a language or an alphabet, we are associating a meaning with the representation of the image or the letter or the symbol. And so it's as though we are investing our consciousness in it as a focusing mechanism. Yeah, I think all that made sense. So also in the Doctor Strange film, it's suggested, I think Doctor Strange asks when he will receive his relic or when he can choose his relic. And the response is the suggestion that the relic finds you, which I really thought was cool. So, and actually I've had an experience of that. One of my daily practices these days in the early morning hours is to spend a little bit of time on Pinterest, educating myself and expanding my visual vocabulary. And I like it because it's to a certain degree passive. I know there are algorithms in place that give you more of what it thinks you want, but I don't have to be focused or deliberate necessarily with seeking out something to contemplate. It's just there on my iPad being presented to me. So one morning a few years ago, this symbol comes across my feed. And at that time, I didn't know really anything about the ancient Nordic or European rune languages. I just thought it was, oh, that's a cool symbol. I like that. And I think there was a brief description of what the symbol meant. And I think it said something like spiritual strength or power of the mind. So I thought, you know what? I like that. I'm going to bring it into my life experience, endow it with the meaning that it means to me, and use it as a focusing mechanism. So I actually engaged a friend of mine who makes jewelry to see if she would be interested in casting a pendant of the symbol. And she was all for it, all about it. So we did that, and I've had this really great little pendant ever since then. But Since I got the pendant and I started wearing it, people would comment, "Oh, you have this bind rune. What doesn't that mean this or that?" And so I had to actually go back and educate myself more about the inherited meaning of the symbol. And actually, it's a bind rune is a combination of two symbols to kind of combine their meanings and create a new meaning. So this symbol is made up of two symbols. One is the upward arrow, which is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's a symbol of Tiwaz. And in different regions of Europe, it has held slightly different meanings. But basically, the meaning I would like to suggest is that it stands for justice, sacrifice, sovereign order, laws, principles, and basically it's the symbol of a warrior. Now, I'm going to speak to the idea of being a warrior in just a moment. The other symbol, which is has the upward leg and then the downward slanted leg that's kind of laid over the Tiwaz symbol, that symbol is Laguz, which means lake. And it's basically a representation of subconscious, collective memory, unity, spirituality, dreams, imagination, intuition. So I kind of see these, one as a strong masculine character and one as more of a feminine, yielding, receptive character. And so the combination of the two of those basically, to me, means spiritual warrior or warrior of light. And so that's kind of the focus, the consciousness that I'm investing into this symbol as I use it as a focusing mechanism for myself. Now, I want to speak to the idea of being a warrior because I've been a little bit resistant and uncomfortable with the idea of being a warrior because of the idea of war. And actually I want to introduce this episode, and some of the last few seems to me it's very self-indulgent, and I apologize for that. I hope there's some level of universal quality to this, or you can find something within what I'm sharing that's meaningful to you. I promise I'll get back to more general and objective expressions at some point. Or you're always definitely invited to check out 33 North, 96 West, which is a collaborative project with my friend Terry Malik, where we talk about similar topics to what you see on this channel, but we definitely universalize them. But anyway, and actually for the next leg of what I want to share today, I want to talk about the Myers-Briggs typology system, because I've had this really interesting recent experience that relates to this conversation. I promise I'll tie it all together in the end. So some of you know about Enneagram, some of you know about Myers-Briggs, many of you know about both. I have more experience with Myers-Briggs, and over the past few years, I've taken several of the online tests, and some of you may say those aren't the best source of how to determine your best fit type. But that's just what I've done. So I always have gotten INFP or INFJ. Every time. It's one of those two. And so I sort of embraced that. There's a lot in those types that I resonate with that seems to be appropriate for me. But I recently had my personality hacked. And let me say, it was I volunteered for a personality hacker training program, and it was by Zoom. So you log in, and then you let one of the students, as they're completing their certification course, you let them ask you some questions and then suggest what they feel or think your best fit type would be. And I received the suggestion that my best fit type is the ENTJ. So this type is defined, one word that's used to describe it is the commander personality. I'm just going to read a little bit of this, which is from a different site, 16personalities.com. A commander is someone with the extroverted, intuitive, thinking, and judging personality traits. They are decisive people who love momentum and accomplishment. They gather information to construct their creative visions, but rarely hesitate for long before acting on them. Here's a quote from Steve Jobs. "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." I agree with that. Commanders are natural-born leaders. People with this personality type embody the gifts of charisma and confidence, and project authority in a way that draws crowds together behind a common goal. However, commanders are also characterized by an often ruthless level of rationality, using their drive, determination, and sharp minds to achieve whatever end they've set for themselves. Perhaps it is best that they make up only 3% of the population, lest they overwhelm the more timid and sensitive personality types that make up much of the rest of the world. But we have commanders to thank for many of the businesses and institutions we take for granted every day. Striving for greatness, it goes on. Okay, so I'm fine being a paradox, and I have to sort of embrace that. But can you just imagine what's going on here with this, which is that when I answer online personality inventory questions about myself, I score as an INFP or an INFJ. And what I'm going to say is, inside myself, I feel like a gentle, kind, sensitive, compassionate, graceful, caring, creative, yielding being. But then at times, the feedback that I receive from my external environment includes the idea of being an ENTJ, a commander. And interestingly, a very good friend and colleague and confidant recently suggested to me in conversation that I was a badass. And so I got this like hit, but then like I kind of know that. So there's this dichotomy, this paradox, this duality that's kind of a part of me and how I seem to present. And perhaps if I go just for a moment into like the childhood development of personality, like probably there's some aspect of my personality as it's outpictured that sort of represents, it's like defense mechanisms. Like I learned how to presence in a way that's strong, not aggressive, but there is an inner confidence, and I learned how to be in interaction with people in a strong, confident way. And so then as I became an adult and I started like opening to this more feminine, yielding, receptive, intuitive, creative, softer inner world, I guess there was a part of me that also wanted that aspect of me to be seen outwardly. And so I've been kind of like exploring and experiencing that duality and how I embody it, but then also how it seems to be perceived. I think all that made sense. So inside I'm this soft, intuitive, creative, compassionate, loving being that sometimes outwardly has this presence of like strength, confidence, commander, warrior. So what I'm contemplating now going forward after having my personality hacked and receiving this feedback is, how do I embrace the warrior in me, the commander, that aspect of me that's so clearly there. It's clearly present. Instead of pushing against it, what do I need to do to move myself into a place of celebrating it and embracing it? And what I've realized over this past weekend is I have this idea of that kind of person that includes despotism and manipulation and debasement and like someone who wants to control others. And that is precisely why I've not embraced that aspect of who and what I am. It's because in my idea of that, I have this sort of, I consider it to be distorted. It's a distortion of the light. Anyone who behaves in a way that is controlling or manipulative or debases others, or you get the idea. Like that feels to me like distortion. So what I'm endeavoring to do now is have a new idea for what it means to be a spiritual warrior. And I spoke to this a little bit in a previous contemplation on this channel about being a wielder of the light. So imagine the idea of a confrontation or a battle or an argument or a war or whatever word you want to use, because see, all of those carry history. But imagine the idea of any one of those phenomenon, but where the only weapon, I'm using my air quotes, the only weapon that's available or that's used in that confrontation is light, truth, love. Because those things can't hurt people. So if you suggest that's the kind of warrior that I am, then I get all tingly and excited about it. I can be the one that wields the light. And actually, I'm just going to work through the Gene Keys language here for just a moment to even expand upon this. So the way I see it, the one who is a spiritual warrior is one who stands for these 64 words: beauty, unity, innocence, forgiveness, timelessness, peace, virtue, exquisiteness, invincibility, being, light, purity, empathy, bounteousness, fluorescence, mastery, omniscience, perfection, sacrifice, presence, valor, grace, quintessence, silence, universal love, invincibility, selflessness, immortality, devotion, rapture, humility, veneration, revelation, majesty, boundlessness, compassion, tenderness, honor, liberation, divine will, emanation, celebration, epiphany, synarchy, communion, ecstasy, transfiguration, wisdom, rebirth, harmony, awakening, stillness, superabundance, ascension, freedom, intoxication, clarity, bliss, transparency, justice, sanctity, impeccability, truth, and illumination. So in the Gene Key synthesis, those are the 64 words that represent the 64 divine or siddhic states of the spectrum of consciousness. So if being a spiritual warrior or a warrior of the light or a wielder of the light is what I am, then those are the things that means to me. And this is a symbol currently that I use to help me focus that way. I have endowed this symbol with that meaning. Good. I think that's what I wanted to share for this episode. If you have any thoughts or excitement or comments that you'd like to share, I welcome that. And one more thing. So if you like great music, I would encourage you. I've recently discovered the demo version of August's Rhapsody by Mark Mancina from the film August Rush. And I want to share that with you. It's one that I recently added to my playlist on Spotify and Amazon called The Language of Light. And you'll love it. The demo version, not the soundtrack or the album version, the demo version. Okay, thank you for joining me for this, the 40th episode of the LightCast. I'm Jared Treadway, sending you love and light. Until next time.